Chapter 6. The statement, weeping is affixed in my heart on this side and joy on that side, is well known. This is to say that one must prepare his soul for the general godly knowledge of the chaining down, hishtalshelut, of the infinite light of the worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah, emanation, creation, formation, and action, until his soul becomes a fitting receptacle for this. This can only come about through these two matters of weeping and rejoicing. For although there are two opposites, nonetheless they come together literally as one, specifically from the same contemplation. It is specifically through this that his soul becomes well prepared, so that the comprehension of the particulars of the infinite light in the worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah become embedded in the essence of his soul. If either of these is missing, in other words, if there is one without the other, then it is certain that nothing has become embedded in his soul. Even if it appears to him that both are in his heart, but they are not within his soul truly and deeply, but only in an external, passing fashion, this is a sure sign that nothing has become embedded in his soul, except from a very great distance, with the slightest opposition, such as being greatly preoccupied, or from an increased sense of self and ego, it will be completely uprooted from his heart. As known, the explanation of these matters is that pleasure and joy are in Chokhmah and Binah. Pleasure is in Chokhmah, insight, and joy is in Binah, comprehension. As known, this is the difference between Shabbat and Yom Tov. The comprehension of the intellect gives rise to joy, that is, the joy of the soul. This is, as stated, the mother of the children rejoices. Moreover, as known, the primary source of joy is specifically in godliness. As stated, they will rejoice in you specifically. Now, we explained previously in regard to the comprehension of Binah that no thought can grasp him. Quite the contrary, he is astounding in the great degree of his transcendence. This is the aspect of the Koach Ma, the power of what of Chokhmah, in which the perception is concealed as explained above. This being the case, it should be the opposite, that joy is not into Hashem's essence. For as soon as he comprehends it, it can no longer be Hashem's true essence, but rather only an aspect of how he restrains himself in order to bring the created into being. Accordingly, Chokhmah, which is the aspect of nothingness as previously explained, is where it would be fitting for the joy of "we will rejoice in you" to exist. However, this is not the case, for as known, nullification, which is the opposite of joy, is specifically in Chokhmah, while joy is in Binah. Rather, as known, the explanation of this is that everything contains its opposite. Moreover, although it is revealed as its actual opposite, from this fact itself we see that its whole force is only due to the opposing force. Furthermore, the strength of the opposing force is always commensurate to the strength of its opposite, literally. If so, they are literally as one. An example of this is pleasure and pain. Commensurate to the degree of a person's pleasure in something will be the degree of the arousal of pain, which is the absence of the pleasure which opposes it. This takes place should something stand in opposition to negate that pleasure, since that is its opposite. The opposite is true as well. The degree of his pleasure in something cannot be recognized except through the degree of pain he has when that thing is missing. We see that this is literally one force, except that it divides into two equal lines which are literally in equal balance to each other. The one side will not be stronger than the second, even to the amount of the thorn of a yud. The same principle applies to joy and weeping. To the degree of his joy, which is a felt and revealed pleasure, when godliness is revealed in his grasp as explained above, so will be the degree of the second side, which specifically comes out of it and from its power. This second side is the weeping over the lack of revealed light in his soul, because godliness is concealed from him, until he literally despises his life. The more one has tasted the flavour of divine pleasure with rejoicing, the more embittered will he be in his soul from its opposite. Likewise, the opposite is also true. From the degree of the depth of his bitterness and weeping, that he despises his physical life, is the strength of his pleasure and joy in godliness recognized. This is the gauge for the measure of its strength. This is because these two lines are counterbalanced with absolute equilibrium as explained above. This then is the meaning of weeping is affixed in my heart on this side and joy on that side, with equal measure, literally. Likewise, even higher than this is the aspect of the concealed pleasure of Chokhmah. It is from this, the depth of his pleasure which is concealed in his essential self, that the aspect of a total and complete nullification of himself comes. Therefore, its opposite, which is born of its strength, is the matter of casting his soul against anything which opposes it, for this is included in the aspect of his ego. In other words, he will despise his life with total and true negation of self, as in the verses, "Who but you do I have in the heavens? And beside you I desire nothing on earth. My flesh and my heart fail, but God is the strength of my heart, and my portion forever." For these two lines are literally on equal balance as explained above. This will suffice those of understanding. Now, there is an aspect of weeping which is even higher than this. This comes out of the lack of comprehension into godliness, because Hashem is so absolutely and awesomely beyond any relativity to him, since the organ of his brain cannot contain it. This is like how the eyes of Rabbi Akiva flowed with tears because of the deep secrets which the organ of his brain could not contain. This is the aspect of the astonishment at the concealed of all concealments, that is literally the essential self of the infinite light, Atzmut or Ein Sof, which is beyond comprehension whatsoever. On the contrary, the more one delves into it, the more astonished he becomes, as previously mentioned. Specifically from this his heart becomes filled with consternation, and he weeps. This only comes because of his immense pleasure and desire to comprehend, which he is incapable of doing. As known, this is the principal receptacle for the aspect of insight into the secrets of the Torah. This is, as explained elsewhere regarding the statement, the secrets of the Torah are only given over to a person whose heart is worried within him. However, were he to comprehend the actual essential self of the infinite light, then there would be a matter of joy into his, Hashem's, essential self. Now, although the revelation of this godly pleasure comes in a completely felt way, nonetheless its source is in the essential pleasure which is concealed from him. It is from this pleasure that the opposite comes forth, which are the tears at the wonderment and transcendence of Hashem and the lack of comprehension of him, as mentioned previously, for these two poles are also in equal balance literally. That is to say, according to the degree and strength of the great and immense pleasure he would have in the essential self of Hashem were he to actually comprehend him, accordingly its opposite will be present, which is the deep weeping when the organ of his brain cannot comprehend him, as explained above. This will suffice those of understanding. We therefore find that the order of the levels of a thing and its opposite is as follows. First is the joy and happiness from a revelation of godly light, which is actually comprehended. The opposite which comes from it is the weeping over the concealment or opposition to this. Higher than this is the aspect of the concealed pleasure and joy, which is in the koach ma of chokhmah, into the essence of the godliness which brings everything into being. Its opposite power is that he despises his own life and the life of anything other than Hashem, as in the verse, "Who have I in the heavens?" Even higher than this is the aspect of the essential pleasure and joy, specifically into the essential self of godliness. This is like the statement, "They will rejoice in you," literally in a revealed way. Its opposite power comes forth when the vessels of his brain cannot contain this. This causes him to weep. This is like the weeping of one who is separated from someone he truly loves with his soul. For example, regarding the love of David and Yehonatan, it states, "He loved him as one loves his own soul." Therefore, when they were forced to separate, it is written, "They kissed one another and wept." This weeping comes as a result of the strength of the abundant love and great pleasure they have when they are together as one. There are many more examples of this. All the above answers the previous matter concerning the fact that joy is in Bina and pleasure is in Chokhmah. Although the comprehension itself is into a restrained revelation of godly light, which he is capable of comprehending, nonetheless the source of the joy reaches into the essence of godliness specifically, just as the souls in Gan Eden literally derive pleasure from the ray of the divine presence, Ziv HaShekhinah, even though their comprehension too comes in a restrained, limited fashion, as known. This then is the meaning of "we shall rejoice in you," specifically. That is, joy on this side, and its opposite, which results from its force, is the weeping, as in the 3 above mentioned levels. These 2 poles are exactly equally balanced as mentioned above. This also is the meaning of the verse, because you would not serve Hashem your God with joyfulness and gladness of the heart, because of the abundance of all things, that is, with comprehension into He who brings everything into being. Similarly, it will thus be in the future, as written, "We will behold Hashem eye to eye," and on that day it will be said, "This is our God," in the second person. Then on that day we will rejoice and be glad in Him, specifically, as is known. This will suffice those of understanding. However, in the state of the world as it exists now, all of this bursts forth and comes out specifically through its opposition. Therefore, what becomes revealed is specifically the opposite, which is the weeping on this side. This is revealed all the way to the highest levels, as stated, "They shall come with weeping," specifically. Likewise it states, "He who goes weeping on his way, bearing a bag of seed, shall come back with a joyful shout, carrying his sheaves." However, in time to come there will be laughter, as stated, "Then shall our mouths be filled with laughter," and as explained elsewhere regarding the matter of the Jaus Kenigya. This is likewise the explanation of the verse, "You are our father," that this refers to Yitzchak, and this tzchok, laughter, will come about in the future. That is, it will come out from its opposite, which is the weeping that there was during the time of exile, as is known. Based on all this, we may understand the true reason why the midnight prayers of Tikkun Chatzot are specifically done through tears. This is advantageous for the soul, allowing one to pray the morning service with a revelation of an essential pleasure in Hashem, as in the verse, "We shall rejoice in you," etc. And although the weeping during the midnight prayer of Tikkun Chatzot are simple tears shed over the sins of one's youth, and the like, nonetheless, about this it states, "My tears were my bread day and night." Day and night refers to the recital of the Shema and the Amidah prayers of the morning and evening. This is because his tears over his distance, which are caused by his sins and transgressions, rectify the aspect of the source of the sin itself. This source of sin is specifically the casting off of the yoke of heaven and the aspect of the exile of the divine presence, which comes in a particular manner in each godly spark. These tears rectify and remove the blemish completely and awaken above the aspect of the weeping which opposes and which comes out of its opposite power, which is the essential joy mentioned above. This joy will radiate within his godly soul during the Shema recital and the prayers, etc., and will literally become as bread for his soul. On the other hand, the casting off of the yoke of heaven is its opposite, which is the opposite of tears. This is like the verse, "He blesses himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart." This is like a servant who rebels. His rebelliousness and the fact that he has cast off the yoke of his master is the main problem and is the source of anything that he will do against the will of his master. About this it states, "The foolish afflict themselves on account of their sinful ways and their iniquities." Now the iniquitous are those who are rebellious, who cast off the yoke of heaven, although they afflict themselves for their sins and the sins of their youth. How will it help? Because their soul abhors all manner of food, which refers to the bread of Chokhmah, as mentioned above. This is the opposite of the pleasure which surely enlivens one's soul. The verse then continues, "They reached the gate of death," as in the verse, "See, I have set before you this day life and good," which is the joy and good-heartedness from the aforementioned essential pleasure. Its opposite is the death and evil through casting off the heavenly yoke. Now it is specifically the tears during the midnight prayer of Tikkun Chatzot, which is the foremost preparation for one's soul to stand in prayer with all of the aforementioned matters of the 3 levels of weeping from this side, etc. However, if not, he will delude himself in one of these ways. Either he will have weeping alone or joy alone, or he will have both, but they will not be true to their depths. This is the sign that the godly light has not touched his soul except from a great distance. This is like the secret of the exile of the divine presence in the collective souls of Israel. This then is the main source and general reason for those who constantly fall from their levels of divine pleasure and joy without it being established whatsoever. With the slightest resistance and opposition, the ropes that bind him to Hashem become completely uprooted from his heart. This is as mentioned above regarding the verses, "The foolish afflict themselves, their soul abhors all manner of food," etc. Therefore, whoever truly desires closeness to God should constantly make a great preparation within his soul during the midnight prayer of Tikkun Chatzot, and with the aforementioned matter of weeping is affixed in my heart on this side and joy on that side. He should not delude himself, thus literally freely destroying his soul. This will suffice those of understanding. From all of the above, we also may understand the reason for the great principle which was said in the name of the Maggid of Mezrich of blessed memory, that to naturally have a dominance of the black gall is a preparatory receptacle to the attainment of true pleasure through self-sacrifice in one and for the reception of all the secrets of the Torah. All this is explained in Kuntras Hahit Pa'alut at length. This will suffice those of understanding.